I say it all the time. The real shift from a worker to a leader isn't external, it is internal. It doesn't begin when the world grants you a title. It begins the moment you decide to take full responsibility for your own judgment, for more than just your prescribed task list. The difference between the worker and the leader is not found in their actions, but in their preceding thoughts, their assent. A worker says, "Tell me what to do." A leader asks, "What is the most rational thing that needs to be done?" That single shift changes everything. The worker is absorbed in the task, which is external and therefore an indifferent. The leader is absorbed in the purpose and the judgment applied to the task, which are within their control. The worker aims to finish the job. The leader aims to ensure the job aligns with virtue. I remember early in my life, I believed that sheer effort and compliant work would secure my happiness. I toiled long hours, kept every promise. But one day, the Stoic realization struck me. I was working hard within the system instead of working on my own internal framework. I was producing results, but not directing my own soul. It's a trap many fall into, mistaking mere activity or motion for ethical leadership. Leadership starts in your mind. It is not about authority. It is about clarity of ethical choice. The question is not, how can I get everything done? But what is the most necessary, rational action I must take first, and why? The worker's focus is compliance. The leader's focus is correct judgment. One simply polishes the ladder, the other constantly verifies that the ladder is leaning against the right moral wall. If you think like a worker, you become dependent on external direction. You wait for assignments, for orders, for instructions, placing your prohairesis, your inner faculty, in the hands of others. If you think like a leader, you generate internal direction. You set the tone, define the priorities, and carry the rational vision in your mind long before anyone else writes it down. That's where Stoic responsibility begins, not for performance, but for purpose. A worker says, "I did my duty." A leader asks, "Did my work and the judgment behind it move us closer to wisdom?" That difference in mindset separates management from self-mastery. See, anyone can work hard, but not everyone can think rationally. Thinking requires space, reflection, and the courage to question. It means looking beyond the comfort of the familiar task and asking, what is the point of all this effort in the scheme of things? When you start thinking like a leader, you begin to own the results of your judgment, not just the routines. You stop blaming circumstances and start shaping your assent to them. You stop waiting for opportunity and start building capacity for it. I tell people all the time, leadership is a choice of temperament you make long before it is a role you are granted. You don't get promoted into leadership, you grow into it. The promotion only confirms the inner commitment your mind has already proven. Workers measure their time. Leaders measure their impact on their own character. Workers aim to be busy. Leaders aim to be useful, to the community and to their highest self. It is a difference in perspective that turns ordinary performance into extraordinary moral achievement. Leadership begins the day you accept that your inner citadel is your responsibility, not your company's, not your supervisor's, but yours. Once that settles in your mind, your behavior changes automatically. You stop showing up just to do a job, you show up to apply virtue. And that, my friends, is the foundation of all Stoic leadership. Before you can guide others, you must first direct your own thinking, your own judgment. Workers see their part, leaders see the whole. That is the simplest way to describe the difference in vision. You see, when you think like a worker, your world shrinks to the space of your assignment. You focus on your shift, your report, your numbers. You judge your performance by what is right in front of you. But when you start to think like a leader, you lift your eyes. You begin to see how your part connects to the universal order, how one rational decision here affects outcomes 10 steps down the line. You start seeing the web of cause and effect instead of the single thread. Perspective creates purpose. Without perspective, even good work can feel meaningless. That's why so many people lose enthusiasm. They are busy, but they can't see where their effort fits into the greater design. It is like spending your life painting a fence without realizing it surrounds a garden. A leader understands context. Every action, every system, every conversation contributes to a larger picture. The leader sees the flow of things, not just the fragments. While the worker asks, "What's my job?" the leader asks, "How does my job serve the mission of my rational nature?" I once read of two stonemasons at work. When asked what they were doing, one said, "Laying stones." The other said, "Building a temple to the gods." Same task, same tools, but different minds. One saw labor, the other saw legacy. That is what happens when you see the bigger picture. You attach meaning to the motion, and meaning changes performance. When people understand why something matters, they work with more care, consistency, and pride. Leaders bring that awareness into everything they touch. They remind others of the reason behind the routine. The worker worries about finishing the task. The leader worries about fulfilling the purpose. That's why leaders think further ahead. They ask questions like, "How does this decision align with my character?" Or, "Who benefits from this decision 5 years from now?" Most people don't look up often enough to see where they are going. They are too busy looking down at the steps. Leadership demands that you keep both views in mind, the details under your feet and the horizon of rational purpose in front of you. You can't guide a team or even your own life if you can't see beyond the day's checklist. That's why vision is the first requirement of leadership. Not eyesight, but the ability to see what others haven't grasped yet, the patterns, the connections, the timing, and the opportunity. When you develop that, you start making better decisions, not because you are smarter, but because you are seeing from a higher floor. Leaders climb the mental stairs. They don't stand on the ground of immediate circumstances. They climb to gain clarity. From up there they can say, "Here is where we must go." And it makes sense because they have seen it from a broader view of logos. Workers often mistake activity for progress. They see the next step and take it, but they never ask if the staircase leads anywhere worth going. The leader steps back, studies the map, and chooses the path that aligns with their highest moral purpose. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. And the only way to know what matters most is to see the bigger picture. So start asking bigger questions. What is the larger ethical goal behind your daily work? How do your efforts affect others downstream? What is the long-term gain of the effort you are expending right now? That kind of thinking turns ordinary work into leadership practice, because once you can see the whole, you will never again be satisfied with just your part. Most people chase goals. Few pursue growth. That is one of the sharpest divides between the worker's mindset and the leader's mindset. Workers think in terms of completion, getting it done, checking it off, meeting the deadline. Leaders think in terms of capacity, becoming better, stronger, wiser through the doing. For the worker, the finish line is the goal. For the leader, the finish line is the beginning of the next race, but now tackled with greater strength and more refined judgment. Every project, every challenge, every problem carries two rewards. The first is what you get from it, the result. The second is what you become from it, the character. The worker focuses on the first. The leader values the second, knowing that character is the only true good. I remember a person once saying they hit every sales target their company gave them, yet year after year, they stayed stuck in the same position. They didn't realize that goals alone don't promote you. Growth does. You can meet every target and still remain the same person you were when you started. Leadership requires a different question. Not did I complete it, but did I grow through doing it? When you think like a worker, you build a resume. When you think like a leader, you build a foundation. A resume lists what you've done. A foundation supports what you can do next. And only growth creates that foundation. Every goal should stretch you beyond comfort. That's what makes it valuable. Easy goals create effort. Hard goals create evolution. The worker asks, "Can I get this done?" The leader asks, "What will this demand of me to become?" See, growth doesn't always come from success. Often it comes from struggle. The worker sees failure as a setback. The leader sees it as feedback, a chance to refine the process, a natural part of reality. That's why leaders recover faster. They extract the lesson and reinvest it immediately. A worker finishes a project and looks for rest. A leader finishes a project and looks for reflection. What went right? What could improve? How can this experience strengthen the next effort? That review process builds maturity. When you build your thinking around growth, goals become checkpoints instead of endpoints. You start to measure progress not by trophies, but by transformation. You become more patient, more consistent, more strategic. It's the compound interest of leadership, steady growth that multiplies over time. And here is something worth remembering. What you achieve will always follow who you become. If you focus only on the goal, you might hit it once. If you focus on growth, you will hit every goal that is aligned with your development. That's why leaders never say, "I've made it." They say, "I'm making progress," because growth never ends. There is always another level of awareness, discipline, or understanding to reach. Don't mistake activity for advancement. A lot of people stay busy without getting better. Leadership demands that you learn from every experience so that no effort is wasted. Every meeting teaches something. Every mistake teaches something. Every challenge shapes the next version of you. When you approach life with that attitude, you start to outgrow your circumstances. And when you outgrow your circumstances, opportunity starts looking for you. The worker chases completion, the leader chases capacity, and the greater your capacity, the greater your contribution. So, keep this principle close. Success will rarely exceed the level of your personal growth. To think like a leader, commit to improving who you are faster than you improve what you do. Because once growth becomes your goal, achievement becomes automatic. Real leadership isn't handed out with a title, it's earned through example. Authority might get compliance for a day, but influence earns commitment for a lifetime. A worker depends on instruction. Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. A leader depends on inspiration. Watch how I handle stress, and you'll want to emulate that composure. The first moves people by command, the second moves people by conviction. That is the difference between power and presence. When people follow a title, they do only what is required. When they follow a person of consistent character, they often go beyond what is required. Influence multiplies effort without needing force. It creates willing energy instead of obedient energy. I've seen managers try to push productivity through pressure, but that never lasts. People eventually resist, even if silently. But when someone leads by example, steady, disciplined, trustworthy, others begin to mirror that standard naturally. Leadership, at its best, is contagious. Trust is the foundation of influence. Without trust, leadership collapses. You can't fake consistency. You can't pretend reliability over time. People always spot the difference between a performer and a person of principle. And once trust is gone, authority has to scream just to be heard. Workers depend on oversight. Leaders depend on self-governance. A leader's word means something because their actions prove it. They keep promises, meet deadlines, and honor standards, especially when no one is watching. That quiet integrity builds invisible authority. You see, a true leader doesn't need to announce leadership. It shows in how they carry themselves, how they treat people, how they respond under stress. People can sense steadiness. They can feel discipline. They can recognize a life built on rational order instead of impulse. That's influence. Leadership begins with credibility, grows with consistency, and endures through character. Titles can be assigned overnight. Influence must be built day by day. The worker often asks, "Who's in charge?" The leader asks, "How can I help move this forward using the resources available to me?" When that mindset takes hold, people naturally start looking to that person for guidance, even without official authority. Influence begins to flow toward those who act responsibly and think clearly. Influence also comes from service. The more value you bring, the more weight your words carry. The one who adds the most value to others gains the most respect. Leadership is not about controlling people, it's about contributing to them. And don't overlook this. People don't remember every instruction you give, but they remember how they felt working with you. Influence is emotional trust built through rational consistency. Be firm but fair. Be strong but kind. It's not about being perfect. It's about being predictable in your principles. When you lead through character, you don't have to convince people. They volunteer their followership. They see in your life what they want in theirs. Influence isn't about charisma. It's about credibility. Charisma might open the door, but character keeps you in the room. So think beyond authority. Stop asking for control and start earning confidence, because when people trust you, they'll go the extra mile with you. And that's where real progress begins. Workers think in tasks. Leaders think in systems. That single difference determines whether success becomes an event or a reliable habit. A task mindset says, "Let's get it done." A systems mindset asks, "How can we make sure it gets done every time?" The worker relies on effort. The leader relies on structure. Effort is personal. Systems are transferable. When you build a system, you create consistency that outlives you. I once told a young man, "Don't just fix the problem, fix the process that caused it. Because if you only fix the problem, you'll meet it again next week. If you fix the process, you prevent it from returning." That's how leaders multiply results without multiplying stress. You see, systems make success repeatable. They capture discipline and design. They remove randomness from performance. While a worker focuses on doing their best, a leader focuses on designing conditions that bring out everyone's best. The farmer doesn't go out each morning hoping the soil will cooperate. He builds a system, plowing, planting, watering, harvesting, so that good results become predictable. Leadership works the same way. Build patterns that make excellence automatic. The worker often works harder because the system doesn't support them. The leader works smarter by shaping the system to support everyone. That's why good leaders spend more time planning and refining than reacting and repairing. Effort alone creates short-term results. Systems create sustainable ones. Every hour spent building a process saves 10 hours of correction later. The leader knows that structure is not limitation, it's liberation. It frees the mind from chaos so energy can flow toward progress. When you think in systems, you start to notice cause and effect everywhere. You ask, what led to this? What triggers that? How can this flow be improved? That curiosity transforms operations into mastery. Leaders aren't content to solve the same problems twice. They build mechanisms that make solutions permanent. Workers look for efficiency in tasks. Leaders look for efficiency in design. And here's a key insight. A system doesn't have to be complicated to be powerful. A checklist, a daily rhythm, a communication routine. All are systems when applied with consistency. Simplicity is strength when it eliminates waste and uncertainty. If you want to grow your influence, start building small systems around your own habits. Don't rely on motivation. Design reliability. Set your schedule, structure your priorities, automate what can be repeated so your mind stays free for strategy. I'm telling you, that's what separates leadership from labor. Workers depend on willpower. Leaders depend on rational order. Once you understand this, you stop asking, "How can I work harder?" and start asking, "How can I make it easier to do the right thing every time?" A good system turns excellence into routine. That's why leaders don't chase success. They engineer it. They create frameworks where good decisions are the default choice. If your results feel unpredictable, check your systems. They always reveal the truth. You can't expect consistent results from inconsistent structure. When you learn to think this way, you move from pushing progress to designing it. And when progress becomes predictable, leadership becomes effortless. Workers respond. Leaders anticipate. That's one of the quietest but most powerful distinctions in the way people think. A worker waits until something happens, then acts. A leader looks ahead, prepares, and acts before the moment demands it. The worker lives by reaction. The leader lives by readiness. And readiness is the foundation of calm confidence. Most of the time, what we call crisis is simply the result of not thinking far enough ahead. You don't have to predict the future to prepare for it. You just have to understand patterns. Life repeats itself. Problems have cycles, opportunities have signals. The leader learns to read those signals early. When you live in reaction, every day feels urgent. When you live in anticipation, every day feels strategic. The worker spends energy catching up. The leader spends energy staying ahead. The first survives the day. The second shapes the day. I learned early that foresight saves both time and reputation. Planning is not just a tool for efficiency, it's an act of leadership. It tells the world, I take responsibility for what's coming, not just what's here. Workers prepare for assignments. Leaders prepare for outcomes. Think about a chess player. The beginner looks at the piece in front of them. The master looks 5 moves ahead. Leadership is mental chess, thinking beyond the immediate move, anticipating consequences, and positioning wisely. You can see this difference in every field. The worker focuses on the next task. The leader studies the trend. The worker handles symptoms. The leader studies causes. One stays busy. The other stays prepared. Anticipation doesn't mean paranoia, it means awareness. The leader stays alert without being anxious. They train the mind to look for clues, shifts in momentum, changes in tone, new opportunities emerging. Then they act early while others are still deciding whether to act at all. Preparation gives you power. It gives you the ability to respond with purpose instead of panic. The worker says, I didn't see that coming. The leader says, I planned for that possibility. That's why some people seem lucky. They simply think further ahead. You see, a leader's strength lies in foresight. While others are reacting to change, the leader is already adjusting to what's next. It's not magic, it's attention. Leaders study cycles, patterns, behavior, and timing. They're students of possibility. And here's the beauty of anticipation. It makes leadership look effortless. People think you're calm under pressure, but the truth is, you already rehearsed the moment in your mind. You already decided what to do when the pressure arrived. The leader asks, what could go wrong? Not out of fear, but out of respect for reality. That question builds resilience. When you expect challenge, you prepare capacity. When you prepare capacity, you move through life with quiet strength. Workers wait for instructions. Leaders create options. They don't just plan for the best, they prepare for the next. So, start thinking like that today. Instead of asking, "What's happening right now?" ask, "What's likely to happen next?" That single question moves your mind from reaction to anticipation. Because leadership isn't about responding faster, it's about thinking sooner. Before anyone can lead others, they must first learn to lead themselves. It's impossible to inspire discipline in others if you live without it. It's impossible to earn respect from others if you don't respect your own commitments. Self-leadership is the starting point of all real leadership. Workers often wait for external motivation. They rely on deadlines, supervision, and pressure to keep them moving. Leaders operate from internal direction. They live by personal standards, not imposed ones. They don't need to be watched to perform well because they've learned to watch themselves. Personal discipline builds invisible strength. It shows up in the smallest details: punctuality, preparation, consistency. These seem simple, but they form the core of credibility. If you can't manage the little things in your own life, you'll never manage the big things in anyone else's. You see, leadership doesn't require perfection, but it does require mastery over reaction. You can't guide a team if you lose control under stress. Calm is a leader's currency. The ability to stay centered when others panic earns trust faster than any title ever could. I've met many people who want to lead, but few who want to prepare themselves for leadership. They want the influence, but not the inner order. But influence without order creates confusion, not confidence. Leading yourself first means mastering habits before managing people. The worker says, "When I'm in charge, I'll be more disciplined." The leader says, "I'll become disciplined now, so I'm ready to be in charge." That's the difference between waiting for position and preparing for responsibility. Self-leadership begins in your daily routine. Your morning, your schedule, your follow-through. They all reveal your readiness for more. Every promise you keep to yourself builds strength. Every excuse you accept weakens it. Over time, those small decisions form your leadership reputation long before anyone calls you a leader. Priorities matter. Workers often let urgency dictate their actions. Leaders organize by importance. They know what deserves attention and what can wait. They understand that focus is a form of respect for themselves and for their purpose. A leader's first job is clarity. What do you stand for? What do you expect of yourself? If those answers aren't clear, others will never know how to follow you. People don't follow confusion, they follow conviction. When you manage yourself well, you set a silent example. Others begin to adjust their behavior just by observing yours. That's how influence begins, without announcement, without forced effort. It starts with self-mastery. And remember, leadership isn't about being above anyone. It's about being ahead in discipline, in composure, in example. It's not authority that earns followers, it's integrity. If you want to rise from worker to leader, start by leading the hardest person you'll ever have to manage, yourself. You don't need a promotion to begin, you need a decision to take ownership of your habits, your time, and your attitude. Once that decision is made, leadership starts to grow naturally, because the truth is simple. No one will believe in your direction until they can believe in your discipline. There comes a moment when every serious person faces the choice to keep thinking like a worker or begin thinking like a leader. That moment is the shift. It doesn't always happen loud or dramatic. Sometimes it happens quietly in the middle of an ordinary day, when you finally realize that doing more isn't the same as becoming more. The worker's life is measured by motion. The leader's life is measured by direction. The worker says, "I'm busy." The leader says, "I'm building." One fills time, the other fulfills purpose. Leadership isn't about escaping labor, it's about elevating it. It's about trading repetition for refinement. The worker asks, "How can I get this